Okay, so yeah.
Okay, Emily Sirota just texted me now, Mikey. It's 7:45. I'm like, what the heck? It's what, driving me?
6:55. We do need to keep it like that. Well, right. Well, we're going to do the so. Yeah, let's just try that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, he's telling me he's not going to be able to use the
That's what I do. To do it or to not do it? The time takes.
Yeah, I'm happy for you.
I'm going to help you. Need your help. What did we decide? Position for because I have a friend and her daughter is that assistant, and she knows just as much as and there's only about that I used to. It's so and she almost makes as much as that, so it's nice to get That's right. Oh my God. I nearly fell over when they started that. Hi, sir.
So she will be here around 7. She's supposed to go first.
What did you do?
Waking you up.
No, you got rid of I can't hear anymore.
Why did it do that?
I walked in front of it.
So I have to stand somewhere.
Do you want me to
Okay, that was your wake-up call. That's great. Some of you look like you were nodding off.
Oh, okay.
Okay, can I have everybody's attention, please? We're going to start our meeting. We have a lot on our agenda tonight, but I have a few quick announcements. I think everybody knows me. If you don't, I'm Mark Hammond. I'm the chair of HD6, and I'm the finance chair of HD6, and I'm the former chair of the Denver Democrats. I think I have other jobs too, but PCP or PO. First of all, I want to thank a couple people for bringing food. CL. I'm going to have to break CL and Sean up. So, Sean, you need to go sit at that table. Thank you, CL. Kathy Wilson. Where's Matthew Logan? Where is Matthew?
Oh, he had to go to another meeting.
Yeah, right. He was going to a debate party. Okay, and then I brought the desserts, which I always do. So, want to quickly mention, if you are so inclined to make a donation tonight to HD6, the bowl is over there. Karen, go stand by the bowl. We'll pass it around. We're doing well in HD6, but we're going to spend over $10,000 on GOTV in the next month. So we need to refill our coffers and get money in there. If you are wanting a yard sign or 2 or 10, I already had somebody tonight buy 10 of them. We still have a few left. I think we have 20 left. And we have another 100 in my garage. So I will be bringing those around. Yard signs are $15 each. You should have one on your lawn. I live in Lowry. There is no Trump signs in anywhere that I've been when I walk. Good, I like that. There are lots of Harris Walls signs. What? The only place I've seen a Trump sign is on Locust between 1st and 6th. And every time I walk by there or drive by there, it's... and none of the neighbors talk to these people, so... so we're looking good with yard signs. Last thing on the tables, there are flyers for our annual wine and cheese party, which is Wednesday, November 13th. We hope you will join us. That's always a big party for us, big turnout. Tickets are now on sale as of right now. And we will be doing tickets, regular tickets up till November 8th, and then late bird tickets from November 9th to November 13th. It will be at Chris Hansen's home, which it's been at, I think, the last 5 or 6 years. So we look forward to seeing all of you there. I don't have anything else, unless you have questions. No questions. Good. Adam? We have no November meeting because this room and this church are a voting center, and our date would be the day of the election. So we will be having our wine and cheese in November, and then we'll be back here December, I don't know what date it is, but it's the first Tuesday for our annual holiday party, which is always a lot of fun. So that's all I have. Andrew?
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everybody. My name is Andrew Fisher. I'm the captain for House District 6A. Thank you for coming. When we originally scheduled this meeting, we did not know that it would overlap with the vice presidential debate. I'll be going home and loading that on YouTube and seeing what I missed once we're finished here. But we had a lot of people scheduled to speak, and moving it last minute would have been a little difficult. So I want to bring up our first speaker, and that is Lisa Escarcega. She is vice chairperson and the member for the 1st Congressional District on the Colorado State Board of Education.
Kudos to you. I always get impressed if they say it right the first time, the name, so kudos. He practiced it, I bet. Thank you. So myself and several of the other state board members and many, many educators across Colorado are going out House districts all over the state to talk about Amendment 80. I have a PowerPoint. They don't have a projector, so I'm just going to talk. It's pretty easy to follow. And the idea here is just to give you a couple talking points that you can then share with your family, your neighbors, etc. As far as why no on 80. All right, so here you go. Here's my couple. This is 3 talking points. 1, Amendment 80 hurts our public schools. I'm going to tell you why in a moment. Number 2, Amendment 80 hurts rural schools. Right? And number 3, Amendment 80 hurts our most vulnerable students. Okay? Those are the ones that nod in the back, right? Those are the ones that really resonated to me. Now, the amendment language, if you, I happened to be at a House District meeting the other day, and they had Ledge Council there with the blue books. I was like, oh my God, would you please just all turn to page 29 and 30? That's where it is in the blue book. But the language is very simple, and that's part of the problem. It's very deceptive. Oh, how long do I have?
You have 2 minutes opening. 1 minute.
No. That's for the RTD forum later.
Oh my gosh. Tell me, you poor thing. I am so
We're
sorry.
sorry.
You're good.
I was like, whoops, no. Okay,
I am
that's
so
fine, that's fine. You're so kind. Thank you.
5 minutes?
Yeah, yes, tops, right? Because I've only got like 5 slides. All right, thank you. Whew, I had a heart attack. All right, so the language, very simple. It just talks about that the state of Colorado hereby declares, etc., the right to equal opportunity to access a quality education. And here's the language. It's highlighted in yellow on mine. That parents have the right to direct the education of their children. And that school choice includes neighborhood, charter, then here's the next part, private and home schools, right? Open enrollment options, etc. So it's those 2 combined that are problematic. When you get into the blue book, Ledge Council does a really good job of talking about where the problem is with that. And it just says, this measure may conflict with current law, prohibiting public funding for private education, and will require interpretation by the courts. In other words, they're going to sue right away, right? It's not clear, it conflicts. We have Kevin Wellner, I don't know, many even know him from National Ed Policy. I like his quote. It says, it really is a full employment for Lawyers Act. It puts judges in the driver's seat later on to try to make some sense of this, right? And they also are clear. It says, depending upon how the measure is interpreted by the courts, so let's assume it's going to court, And the state legislature, the measure may change the allocation of state or local funding for education. Right? So in other words, you can end up paying for private school. Right? So, bad for education. The money for, so how it works, people want to know exactly, so what happens? We have about 90,000, roughly, homeschooled private school students in this state. If they were all eligible for funding from the state, right? Right now we have 900,000, roughly, kids in the state. You would be growing the pie of students eligible for funding by 10%. Wow. The Colorado Fiscal Institute has done an excellent job. If you go to their website, and they say if we were to get vouchers, this system like Arizona has right now, it would cost the state $642 million. Florida type would cost $789. Colorado, if we did our base funding, would be about $780,000 or $780 million. I'm sorry. Okay, that just blows a hole. It has blown a hole in the Arizona budget between their tax drop. They dropped all their income tax to 2.5 for both wealth. It doesn't matter how much you make in Arizona, right? They dropped it, and they did vouchers. They have a $1.4 billion deficit that they're walking into next year. Rural schools. All right, this is one of the funny things because I'll sit on the board and I'll hear people say, Denver, we're tired of having Denver drive stuff and, those Denver officials, et cetera. And I relate to them. I mean, I grew up in rural. Well, this time they actually are right. Where are the private schools and most school choice in the state? It's in the Front Range. Rural school districts lose money under this more than anybody. And in states where vouchers have happened, Republican rural educators, legislators, they have all come out against it. Just they get overrun in the legislature. Okay? And then last, legal protections for most vulnerable students don't apply to private schools. And it's not just they never have. It's not just the title protections, though. You think about things like open meetings laws, Open Records Act. None of those things apply to private entities. Anyway, you get the idea. We did have, I've got cases here in Colorado. We've got private schools that have asked students to leave, staff to leave, etc. So, next question I usually get, so who's supporting this? Who brought it? It's one of the first questions I always ask. A couple of conservative organizations, Ready Colorado, Advance Colorado, and the Colorado Catholic Conference are the three organizations now that are in support of 80. If anybody has heard about any other groups, if they come out in support of it, let me know. There's hardly anybody. The opposition, I have an entire chart here. But you can go through the list. You have the usual CEA CASB case. CEA is taking the lead on this, but we've got to help our teachers and educators. They have so much going on. They shouldn't be the ones to have to fight all the time. You got Stand for Children, PTA, the Colorado Democrats, of course, Fiscal Institute. I'll just go through a few more. ACLU, Great Ed Colorado, ASME. Colorado Rural Alliance, which is an organization that supports rural school districts in the state. And they support some of the most conservative rural districts through the state. They have opposed this. The latest one is Christian Home Educators of Colorado. I don't know, so it is a wide swath of individuals. I did want to just ask, if I have one moment, to maybe have Pat, what I've told folks is who you don't see here are organizations that support charter schools, right? We have a few that specifically do, because this was thrown out there as, well, this is to protect charter schools. And maybe, Pat, you want to say a couple words? You have a phone a friend.
Hi, everybody. Pat Donovan, PO in 618. I'm an unabashed public charter school supporter, and I'm absolutely not in support of this. It is most definitely an orientation towards opening the door to private school vouchers, and we already have school choice in the state. in law, and
30 years.
and it works, and it works for public charter schools. And so while Lisa and I don't agree on lots of things, we do agree on this one. And so thank you for your work on this one.
Thank you. And that's what I usually mention is when we say funding is lost for public schools, the charters are included. Charters will also lose that funding just like a traditional neighborhood school, right? We all lose in this scenario, so thank you. And we agree a lot more than you think, I have come to find out. Just one more statement. So how is it polling is the last thing I'll talk about. And when they did some initial polling, if you just read it, it comes out at about 50, low 50s or whatever. It has to reach 55. As soon as you provide any information to the individual on this, the rate plummets. And so my hope is that we go out, each of you talk to 10 or whatever it is. I want this to go down big so that they stop coming at us. We had 3 ballot initiatives in the 90s for vouchers, and they all died. Then since 2016, I tracked this, we've had 18 individual measures introduced to the legislation to have some kind of either savings account, vouchers, etc. Now, they're all dead, right? They all die. Most of them don't even make it out of committee. And that's the way it should be. Republicans, conservatives should have the right to bring this up. The voters speak every single time. It's this nefarious, really unclear, trying to sneak it around into the Constitution. That is what they're trying to do in states like Colorado where they haven't been able to break through the wall. Okay? Yes. Question. She had a question.
So does it basically take the funding that we have in Colorado for public schools, and it would give every student, so if you go to a public school, there are many in Denver that are like $50,000 a year, would it allow that person $50,000, or how does it,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
understand.
exactly. So each student, roughly on average in our state, gets about $13,500. So if I want to go to Regis High School, which by the way, I just checked, is $25,000 a year, I can take the 13 that they give me from the state, the 13.5, and apply it. I only have to pay 12. It does not cover most of the private school costs that you will find, right? And so the parent would have to make up the rest. When you go in states like Arizona, where they've introduced these vouchers, they're called universal vouchers, 75% of the individuals who take advantage of it already had their children in private school.
So they already were afforded.
So you are, the number of low-income families that take advantage is very small. Florida, they did it, 122,000 students were in private school, took advantage of their voucher program. And only 13% of those were in traditional school. 87 were already in private schools. So that's how it helps.
41 years in public school as principal administrator in North Carolina. They passed the vouchers after I moved to Colorado just a few years ago. Last year, they took $165 million from public schools to give to private schools.
Oh my God.
In a state where school funding was underfunded, $1.1 billion already. They took $165 million.
So you're against it?
Oh.
I appreciate it. And we're in a state that can't just raise our taxes. So we, in particular, as a state in the nation, really get creamed on this one. So
Any more questions?
I'm counting on all of you. You my peeps, yay. Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda was supposed to be Councilwoman Sarah Parody, but we understand she's about 5 minutes away. So I'm going to move another agenda item up, which is, Mark mentioned earlier that we're going to spend over $10,000 on GOTV in the next month. And I, especially since so many of you have generously given to the House District, wanted to give you a little bit more details so you know what you've invested in over the course of the last 2 years. That may be Sarah Parody. Our total GOTV budget is $12,064.72. And we're going to do 3 different things with that. The first is that we are going to distribute 13,322 sample ballots door to door to walkable addresses. So those are houses that we can just walk right up to the front door and Windsor Gardens, since we have folks in every building at Windsor Gardens and can get in there. And additionally, we're going to mail 10,798 sample ballots to voters with inaccessible addresses. So those are apartment buildings where we do not have POs or block captains that can get us in. That's actually the biggest, call it cost center, because it costs us about 19 cents to print each sample ballot, but then 54 cents to mail each sample ballot. We're looking through DPOD to get a bulk rate on mail, but I don't know what the status of that is, so we're budgeting, assuming that we have to pay the full 54 cents for each. And then the last thing, and this is sort of new this year, based on some feedback that we received, is we're not going to distribute or mail sample ballots to anyone under the age of 40. And instead, we are going to text them with a QR code or a link to the online sample ballot. What we've heard from POs repeatedly is that young voters either don't check their mail or they quickly discard everything that looks like junk mail or advertisements to them. So we're going to try to preempt that by texting them. We will do a little debrief after this election and see how successful that was. And additionally, we're going to ask POs to do a bunch of things that don't cost any money. The primary one is ballot chasing. As we get closer to the actual election date, we're going to ask POs to follow up with Democrats and liberal-leaning unaffiliated voters who haven't yet returned their ballots. And on that note, I should tell you exactly who we're going to be doing all this with. Registered Democrats and liberal-leaning unaffiliated voters, as well as Green Party members. There are very few of them in the district, but we figured we might as well throw them in since theoretically they probably support a lot of the same goals that registered Democrats do. In terms of timeline, ballots drop in mid-October. We have submitted our order for sample ballots to the printer. We're in the process of getting our bulk texting software set up. We're hoping to get the sample ballots certainly by October 11th. What we're going to try to do is distribute them in a few days to a week after the actual ballots have dropped. That way, people, when they receive them, think, oh, I have my actual ballot. Let me save this for when I go to fill out my actual ballot. We've been talking with Scott Guthman. He had initially suggested perhaps we distribute it as soon as possible. We're a little worried that if we do that, people are going to treat it like junk mail and throw it out right away because they haven't been prompted by receiving their actual ballots yet. So it's going to be a lot of work, especially for our POs the next few weeks, but we want to thank all of you for contributing so generously over the past 2 years, as well as I'm sure some of you will be volunteering over the next few weeks to help get this done. We really, really, really appreciate it. Any questions about any of that?
When you say sample ballot,
Yes.
what about, were we going to do the postcards on what the Denver Dems recommend?
That's exactly what I mean. I should probably call it literature or a flyer. That's a little bit jargony, but what it's going to be is a two-sided 8.5 by 11 sheet. On one side it's going to be English, on the other side it's going to be Spanish. Both sides are going to have a list of all of our Democratic nominees for all the offices in Denver, as well as a list of all the ballot measures and either, depending on whether it's statewide or Denver, the position that the Colorado Democratic Party or the Democratic Party of Denver took on them. So all the votes that those of you who are on the Central Committee took at the meeting last weekend, it'll say, Initiative 1A, Denver Democratic Party endorses, opposes, or has no position on it.
So does the state Democratic Party go through the same procedure? Yep.
They do, yeah. So we voted only on the Denver issues, right? And they voted on the state issues. So on some of them, they took no position because they couldn't get 2/3 either way, right? So,
Well, they would like those be on the
Yeah, they'll be on there. Like
Yes.
the one that it was talking about, that one, we took a position on that. We oppose it.
yeah. So it will include both state and Denver. Any other questions?
Oh, yeah, that one's cool.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councilwoman Parody, sorry to interrupt. Can I call you up? All right, please welcome Councilwoman Sarah Parody.
Thanks, guys. Just getting the mac and cheese sauce off my hand that I bribed my children with. Hey, Amy and Oscar, are you guys going to be so quiet? Okay, Oscar, are you going to be so quiet? Okay, good. Awesome. You guys heard him. It's like when a candidate comes, they've committed now, you can hold them to it. So I'm here to talk about all of the ballot initiatives that City Council has sent through to your ballot this year. There are a number of them, and they're just incredibly important. So I've been really grateful for the time to talk to all of these groups, because I know that your neighbors listen to you. I'm going to go in order of the ballot. So 2Q is Denver Health. I probably don't need to say anything more than 2Q is Denver Health. What I will tell you that's helped for some people to hear, because I understand there being some uneasiness about this continued move to add these little sales tax increments. I get that. We're paying attention to that. With respect to Denver Health, they don't have any kind of like baseline source of funding. They get Medicaid reimbursement like any hospital, but they don't have any sort of special status with the state government, the federal government, or the city government. We typically pay them a chunk of money for uncompensated care that they provide that they don't get Medicaid or insurance reimbursement for. He's breaking the promise. Anyway, so what this will do is give them a stable source of funding, and if they don't get it, Denver Health won't necessarily say this because they don't want to catastrophize, they want to find a way. I have seen their financials. They're in a world of hurt, and we could lose that institution to the city if we don't pass this ballot measure. And it is the best available of really limited options. You know, the state kicked in like $5 million for them last year. That the size of their budget hole is more like $150 million. So, and we all know how the state budget looks this year. So that one's crucial. I will say with respect to sales tax relevant to 2Q and 2R, that you all probably know that in Denver, sales tax is less regressive than it is other places because we carve out most basic necessities. We don't do sales tax on groceries, medical stuff, gas. Thank you to whoever's trying to wrangle those kids. Oscar Thomas, sorry guys, I'm gonna use the mic. Oscar, hey bud, you wanna come up here? Okay, he does better. He might try to steal the mic, but also he's done this presentation many times. So the sales tax is kind of what we've got to work with. Obviously, you guys know what's going on at the legislature. We can't raise property tax in Denver at this moment. The only broad-based things we have available to tax as the city are sales and property. Any other measure that you might think of, we in my office have a board of, sorry, I was joking, but he was serious. I'll just give you that. Oscar, you can say hi when I'm done if you're quiet, okay? Okay. Good job, bud. If you're quiet. So, sorry guys. They've already been to, they were at another town hall with me leading up to this, so. You may have heard talk about other ways of trying to bring revenue in for some of these needs. Real estate transfer fee, you know, I mean, we have thought through every possible one of those things in my office, and some of them I think are worth pursuing, but none of them is broad-based enough to bring in this kind of money. They're smaller, so they're things that we could think about for dedicated funds for more specific uses, but they don't have that you just don't bring in this much revenue with anything other than sales and property. So moving on to 2R, having sort of previewed that. 2R is Affordable Denver. I am really proud to have been a co-sponsor of this. Evan Dreyer in the back was with the mayor's office as this was going on and is now working most of his time for the 2R campaign. So a good source of information. Oh God, there's more money. This is like turning into a bit. All right, so also, Amy, if you see Dad come in, you need to go to Dad, okay? If he comes. Let's hope. So 2R, I have read a lot of the criticisms that are floating out there about 2R, and I disagree with them. We did this over a relatively quick period of time over the summer, but council put a huge amount of time and attention into it, amended the ordinance quite a bit from where it started, and essentially what we're trying to do is bring in $100 million for housing production and housing stability. That's probably my spouse to get my kids. And the reason for that is because when we talk about Denver's overheated housing market, we have a housing agency in the city that's existed for 5 years now and has really started to learn what we can do as the city, what we can fund that will either keep someone in a unit that's presently affordable to them, whether that's property tax relief or a city voucher or all kinds of things, or home modifications for people with disabilities who suddenly have that need to stay in place. And we figured out how the city can play in housing production, adding units. So we just had a Dr. Cog study that showed that our unit gap for units for people that are like average income and below in the city is sort of metastasizing. We probably have about 44,000 deed restricted affordable units, and we probably need about 44,000 more. So that's pretty stark. We have to double our affordable housing stock. And when I say affordable and deed restricted, that actually goes up to incomes. Thank you. Okay. No, Imogen, you need to go with Dad. Oh yes, okay, come here. Say affordable housing is urgent.
Affordable housing is urgent. Sorry about the 2-year-old.
I know, I'll bring her home in a second.
Hey,
sweetie. Amy, you can show Dad. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. So, the need for like a large fund to start kickstarting this kind of thing, like one way that I can illustrate that is that anytime there's a round of federal LIHTC dollars for affordable housing, it is oversubscribed like triple, which means there are affordable developers that own chunks of land that are prepared to build on them, and they don't quite have the financing that they need, and that gap doesn't get filled, and the parcel of land sits there with no units going onto it. It's already zoned, they already own it, they want to build on it, they have all the rest of the financing in play, and they can't do it. So gap financing, revolving loans, all the different ways that we can start to kickstart some of that affordable development. I think what I was saying before the rescue is that if you look at the tables, when we say affordable housing, honestly, that means anybody up to like an average Denver income. And so depending on the size of the family, you could be making $150,000 a year and still not be able to afford housing in the city. So the inverse of affordable is just who can't afford it right now. And that's most of us, to be honest, which is a situation we never should have gotten into. Rents and mortgages have both tripled in 20 years in Denver. Tripled. Like, how are young people supposed to manage that? So we all know this. This fund is the solution to that because it's going to take what we already do in our housing department and just scale it and fund it. They've been learning to do these things. We have a council working group right now, if you're interested, every Wednesday from noon to 1 o'clock, that's working through every single source of funding that we have for these different housing initiatives, how we use it, and what it sort of gets back for us in terms of people who are stabilized or in a unit, so either units or households. We're working through all of that. And then in January, one of the things that we amended into the ordinance that's on your ballot is we as City Council will get to vote on both the first year spending plan and a mechanism for how they're going to distribute those funds in the future, meaning making sure that the largest chunk of the money goes to the hardest housing to get, which is at the deepest affordability levels, but that we're also keeping our eye on the levels that are like closer to market. So lots of work has gone into it. I really asked for a yes vote. And again, if we had more tools, maybe it wouldn't be sales tax. If I was in charge of income tax, some corporations would know what had hit them, but I am not. So, okay. The other ones are much quicker and pretty straightforward, I think, at least in the install of Democrats. So to S in order is taking our city human rights agency, which has existed for a while at the discretion of the mayor, and making it a charter level agency so that it can't ever be disbanded. It's a great agency. We need it. Please vote yes. No budgetary impact. The agency already exists and does its excellent work. 2T is following in the steps of what the military does and saying that if people want to serve within our safety agencies, and they are legally residing in the United States, they don't have to be citizens. Right now, you have to be a citizen. So someone who's a legal permanent resident or a green card holder who's qualified to become a firefighter, a sheriff, or a member of the police can't do that. So we would like to lift that so that we can hire broadly and have people in the city agencies that are representative of the community. 2U, very close to my heart. This was I was one of the prime sponsors on this one as well as 2R. This is collective bargaining for our city employees. They don't have collective bargaining rights for the most part. The safety agencies do. The other 75% of our employees do not. So you guys know that now county employees have that through Colorado Winds. Our teachers have had it for 75 years. Our safety agencies have had it for a very long time. And it's a real equity issue for the rest of our workforce, and also contributes to some of our extreme turnover in positions like caseworkers, garbage collectors, some of the entry-level positions. We don't retain people that well because we're not necessarily providing them what they need to live and work in Denver. So I'm happy to speak more to that if anybody is interested in details, but to me it's pretty self-explanatory that our employees should have those rights that the vast majority of public and private sector employees already have. But again, happy to take questions. 2V is a much smaller charter amendment related to collective bargaining. And what that one would do is, when you get down in the weeds, people who have been in unions know this, if you actually are bargaining over a contract and you can't come to agreement at the end of the day and you come to an impasse, there's always this question of how does that get resolved? Our teachers have the right to go on strike with pretty much no restrictions. Our safety agencies in Denver do not have strike rights because that's considered too threatening to public health and welfare. So instead, what we have is a process called binding interest arbitration. So you essentially get like a retired judge, someone that we hire as the city, and they just decide the dispute and they settle what the contract's going to be after hearing everybody out and listening to a set of factors on both sides. The firefighters are the exception right now. They have a different resolution process that is called fact-finding. It doesn't work as well. They would like binding interest arbitration. And if you pass to you, all of the other employees in the city, essentially, if the mayor makes a determination that their jobs impact public health, safety, and welfare, they will not have the option of striking at all. Like, they will be off the table just like the safety agencies. If the mayor is not able to sort of determine that, they would potentially have the right to strike. And in either instance, the ultimate resolution mechanism would also be binding interest arbitration. So 2V gets fire in line with everybody else, police and sheriffs now, and the rest of the employees if 2U passes. And finally, almost done, 2W, this is salaries of elected officials. My understanding, and I should have put my eyes on the ordinance language again because I'm forgetting the details, but basically right now, our charter specifies how much the salaries of all the electeds in Denver increase, and it's I can't remember if it's the consumer price index, it's a small like inflationary increase. That's the only increase. And then even though the charter specifies that, we also are supposed to vote and approve it. So we don't have the discretion to give ourselves a bigger raise, nor should we. We don't want that discretion. We don't even want to vote on this at all. We would like for it to be purely automatic because it's basically a symbolic vote anyway. So it's like a waste of our time and makes it look to people like we're, voting on our own pay, and we'd rather not. So it just fully automates it. I don't know why. I mean, it's a goofy setup to begin with. So yes, on all of the charter referred amendments, please. And thank you very much for the tolerance of the tiny people. Like, genuinely.
So
yes.
all of these just passed with 50%?
Yes. Yeah, they're 50%. And then council can't change them. We have to leave those in place for at least a year, and then after a year, we have to have a supermajority to ever tinker with them. Yeah. Any other questions about the details of the policies? 2R, 2U? Oh, yep.
It was just 2W. So it won't change any, the one you just were
Oh, salaries. I know. I'm fuzzy. Let me pull it back up. I've got it right here. I'll look at it.
It's not going to change any money because it'll just
Right.
be, like, right now, you guys just say yes to whatever it is that's going to.
Yeah, the charter sets out how much our salaries increase. And again, the part I don't remember is, I think it's the consumer price index, and it may be like the lesser of that and something else, but it's small, it's automatic. And then even though the charter says what it is, and there's no gray about that, it sets it right out, we still have to vote to like approve it for no apparent reason. Does that make more sense? It doesn't make sense, but that's why we're fixing it. Other questions? Okay, cool. Thank you all for being the kind of people that come and do this at 8 o'clock at night. Appreciate you.
All right. As some of you know, and as Councilwoman Parody just suggested, we have a monster ballot this year. Last I heard from Mark, I believe it was going to be 8 pages. No? Mark's shaking his head. 6.
Yes!
6 pages.
Oh, we got rid of 2.
One of the last elected offices you'll vote on is still really important, and we're excited to have the 3 candidates running for that elected office here today. That's RTD Director for District A. We're going to have a little candidate forum. The rules are 2 minutes for opening statements, 2 minutes for closing statements, 1 minute to answer each question. I have note cards. Once I get off stage here, I will pass them out. If you have a question, please write it on the note card. I will collect it and pass all the note cards to our wonderful moderator, Matt Ball, who's the co-captain of House District 6A. So please join me in welcoming Matt and our 3 candidates, Kyle Brunner, Bob Diniger, and Chris Nicholson.
All right, everybody. Thanks for coming to the most exciting debate that's happening tonight. The debate for RTD District A board leadership. I'm Matt Ball. I'm the House District 6A co-captain, and I'm honored to be moderating our debate today. The structure for the forum / debate is going to be, we're going to start with just an opening statement from each of our candidates for 5 minutes, and then I will ask a series of questions, sometimes to the whole panel, sometimes directed at...
2 minutes for opening and closing, and 1 minute for each question.
Okay, I stand correct. 2 minutes for opening statement, so it'll have to be brief. 1 minute for each question. Sometimes I'll direct that to all 3 candidates, but I may ask you individual questions as well.
And 2 minutes at the end.
And 2 minutes at the end. As Andrew mentioned, if you have questions that you would like to be asked, please pass them to Andrew, and he will pass them to me. So without further ado, let's just go down the line with our opening statements. And we'll start with you, Kyle.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us tonight and allowing us the time to speak with you. My name is Kyle. It rhymes with mile. And I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm running for RTD in District A. Most of my adult life, I worked for Democratic and progressive causes, worked for Bernie Sanders, Governor Polis, the ACLU, Southern Poverty Law Center, Defenders of Wildlife, Labor, and I worked on the vaccine equity program here in the state of Colorado. I also grew up, it was an honor working in those places, and I enjoyed solving challenging problems, and that's a lot of reasons why I'm running for RTD. One of the biggest problems I think we have right now, and the cause that rises above for me, is combating climate change. I think it's critical to ensuring we have a habitable planet with clean air, land, and water, and that's why I'm running for the board. Some of my core values are transit, environmentalism, and social equity. My grandparents were surgeons for the railroad, nurses, Democratic politicians, and wildlife conservationists. My dad ran an environmental manufacturing company, and my mom worked in social work field. Right now, I'm a data scientist. I build cybersecurity and federal budgeting software with AI and machine learning to help taxpayers save money. Before that, I got a master's degree, and I was a field organizer, campaign manager, and finally a public opinion researcher. And I worked at every level of government as well. So I worked in all 3 branches of government as employee, contractor, intern, volunteer, all the way up and down. I'm also a husband to an amazing woman here and leader of the state of Colorado. And then I'm a dad who wants to teach his kid about what it means to be part of the community. And,
thank you. Bob, over to you.
Is this on? Press the button.
Now it's on. Thank you, Chris. Hi, I'm Bob Diniger. Let me provide a little contrast for you. I'm an alternative to the status quo. As a bus driver, union local president, and transit advocate, I've been doing this work for years. I'm the only candidate in District A with direct experience of RTD operations, security, management, and governance. A safe, reliable, and trusted transit system is so boringly obvious. What's that supposed to be? Innovation? The real question is, how did we get into this mess, and how do we get out of it? I started paying close attention to RTD's board in 2020 because my life literally depended on it. I had passengers coughing as they stood within inches of my face. No one wore masks. The very real fear of being exposed to a deadly virus became part of my workday. The agency was slow to respond, its board was also, and I got angry. It became painfully obvious that my life and my fellow transit workers didn't mean squat to RTD. I spoke up, writing emails, calling board members. Some have credited my advocacy for helping expedite the provision of personal protective equipment and the institution of rear door boarding. Having driven an RTD bus from 2019 to 23, and after nearly 5 years of regularly absorbing board and committee meetings, organizing transit forums and town halls, I decided to run for the board last May. I figured I'm just what they need, another old white guy. I'm a longtime progressive with a clear-eyed view of what we need with and from RTD and some considered views on what it's all about. Other than respect, safety, trust, and transparency, it's about time. Time is our most precious resource. Riding RTD shouldn't take 3 times as long as driving. It shouldn't be a personal sacrifice to use public transportation. We need reliable service every 15 minutes. Connections should be efficient. Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Chris Nicholson. I am a full-time RTD rider, the only one running out of all 14 candidates across the metro area for the RTD board. I took the bus to get here today. I'm running because RTD is not delivering the service that people want, and I know that it can do better. I'm a vocal housing and transit activist, a proud and active Democrat. I'm the only candidate on this stage who's a precinct organizer, an active volunteer, and a regular Democratic donor. As an advocate, I've dug in, studied, listened, and shown up and earned the trust of people like our mayor, Mike Johnston, Senator Chris Hansen, Councilwoman Sarah Parody, who's here tonight, SEIU Local 105, the RTD Transit Workers Union, Colorado Blvd for Political Action, and many, many more people across the metro area. I've also earned the trust of other candidates. That's why 7 of us joined on a shared policy platform to address safety, reliability, and quality within RTD's existing budget. I led the effort to bring everyone together because the biggest failure of RTD right now is a lack of bold collective action. We need leaders who know the details, are willing to step up big, and can bring people together. Read our plan, a commitment to riders, on paper or at fixrtd.com. Thank you all for coming tonight, and thank you for caring about transit.
You've got 30 minutes.
That's fine. I finished early.
Succinct. That's how we like it. Thank you, gentlemen. The first question is, like many transportation districts throughout the country, RTD has seen ridership plummet since the pandemic. RTD has a plan to restore service levels to about 85% of their pre-pandemic levels, called the System Optimization Plan, which you're probably familiar with. The question is, do you disagree with anything that RTD is currently planning on doing to get ridership back up, like increasing main routes to occur approximately every 15 minutes, looking at the data to allocate resources to where ridership is the greatest right now? Or do you have a different vision for how RTD can restore services to the levels that it had a few years ago? And let's go in reverse order. So Chris, we'll start with you.
So I think the first thing I would say is I think RTD is not acting dramatically enough. I think the SOP went reasonably far in consolidating routes and trying to optimize around where demand is at its highest. But there were certain political concerns that went into the process there. And I think that we are at a moment now where what voters overall want to see is the highest ridership possible. I think in addition to that, RTD needs to be doing more on demand generation. There are virtually no programs right now that do outreach to, for example, the African American community, that do outreach to young people and college students to ensure they actually use the college passes and the free fare for youth that they're now provided with. I think there's a lot of latent demand in the system if RTD would do a better job of trying to capture it. And so I would focus a lot of effort on that.
Bob?
Thank you. Hello? So, in July of 22, I wrote to RTD's board and asked why was the system optimization plan, which I applaud, by the way, which was going to cut long routes that were 90 minutes in half, delayed until 2027, which apparently is still the case largely. And the answer I got was we lack the resources. I asked what resources you're referring to. They said people, the people power problem. Well, now they're down to 3%, okay? That's the vacancy rate. Where's the service? They got 200 people almost sitting on the bench waiting to relieve people. It's time to step up. We're not going to see any changes until maybe May, maybe September of next year.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kyle, sorry, no problem. You're like 90% of people get it wrong. So, anyway, goals for ridership have lagged behind that of most other transit districts in the country post-pandemic, and I think there's a lot of key drivers that are part of the problem here. I think first of all, we're not collecting the right data to understand what ridership is going on right now, and I think we could do a better job using existing resources to capture more information and utilize that information in better committing to a strategy for a long term. I think the system optimization plan is a bold goal, but it's missing a lot of the metrics that are needed to actually drive the transit system that we deserve. And I say that because we only get about half of the data. You just tap in, you don't tap out, and there are other ways to capture that information through cameras and checking density.
Thank you. Bob, you brought up the topic of resources. As you know, a critical resource for RTD that it's short on is drivers, and there's only so much that RTD can add routes if it's struggling to add drivers. What strategies would you employ on the board to increase RTD's ability to hire and fill its current driver shortage? And Bob, we'll start with you.
Well, again, maybe I was talking too fast, but they filled that gap. They've got the drivers, okay? There's only 27 vacancies right now for bus drivers. The issue is retention. How do you keep people in a job where you don't get respect, where you hardly get a break? After a 90-minute run, you might have 2 or 3 minutes to use the bathroom, if you're lucky. It's a very stressful job. So really what we need to do is start looking at the compensation, and that is crucial.
Thank you. Chris?
So I'm really proud to actually have the endorsement up here of the ATU 1001, the bus drivers union, which are the folks that operate the trains, operate the buses, as well as the mechanics. The first thing I'll say is we have more solved the issue with the buses than we have with the light rail. There are still significant shortages with the light rail, and it's why the light rail is running so infrequently. The second thing I'll say is that I've talked extensively with the president of ATU, and their biggest concern, he's right, it's retention. People are leaving to go drive for UPS because they're not going to get spit on, they're not going to get harassed, they're going to have time to use the bathroom. They want to fix working conditions, and I'm dead set committed. If I'm on the board, I pledge this to Lance, practically a blood oath. I will deliver better working conditions because I think it's how we fix the retention issue, and I think it's absolutely just the moral thing to do. We should not treat bus operators worse than we would want to be treated if we were working at any other job.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I echo both the statements of gentleman next to me here as well, but I think we can go a little bit further with that. Talking to the union as well, and understanding that safety is one of their concerns. I think one of the things that they want to do is put the cameras in the right place, and on the buses, the cameras were not installed in the correct location. So there is some technical debt in the system that could increase safety, but I think in the long run, we know from human behavior that increasing ridership is going to also increase safety and create a healthier working environment for the operators, because larger ridership means more people on the buses, means people usually are nicer and act more close to social norms. So I think what we have to do is focus on both the retention issues that we're seeing here with the union and the technical side of things too, but like going across the board to ensure that ridership is increasing as well.
Thank you. So picking up on that, you mentioned safety. So a follow-up question. Safety is a big deal for a lot of potential riders of RTD who might steer clear because they don't feel safe on RTD buses. What would you do to combat safety, or at least the perception of safety on RTD buses?
Absolutely. And so I worked with the ACLU and law enforcement agencies on their de-escalation policies and use of force policies. And I've worked with the ACLU on interacting with transit agencies as well. And I think that when, doing the studies, we saw best outcomes when there was a tiered approach to approaching, crime and safety on the transit system. So first, using ambassador programs, which RTD has a pilot program, expanding that to improve customer safety and also the safety. Second is going to be like Denver Star program, where we have, a civilian emergency approach to emergency situations, getting people the help they need. And then the next step is going to be, engaging with law enforcement to de-escalate as fast as possible any violent situation, and then keeping public safe.
Thank you. Bob or Chris, would you like to add any comments on that?
I will. Yeah. So safety is the number one issue in the year that I've been running that I have heard from voters across District A and especially in this House district. And so it's a big reason why I went out and got to know all of the other candidates running for RTD and built a coalition of 7 of us that agreed on a joint, comprehensive platform to address safety, reliability, and quality, because I want people in this community to be able to ride. What we're going to do, we are going to deploy transit ambassadors across the system. We're going to pay for it by getting rid of the rent-a-cops that RTD currently spends $22 million on out of a $40 million safety budget. We're going to spend more money on safety because I want everyone who goes to a transit station, who goes to a bus stop on Colfax, to feel like they belong. And that means more presence. It does not mean more cops as frontline workers for these incidents. It means putting somebody there with a radio and the ability to help de-escalate a situation and talk to a police officer if absolutely necessary. That's how we fix safety.
Thank you. Bob, you can decline, but would you like to add anything?
Sure. Thank you. I've been up close and personal with these situations. And I will say that a great mistake was made back in 2021 when the president of ATU 1001 called Union Station a hellhole, and they basically locked the place down. Denver's living room, okay? You can't be there without a cocktail in your hand. And I don't think that's right. I think harm reduction needs to be looked at. I've met with Lisa Ravel with the Harm Reduction Action Center. She would love to have a presence downstairs at Union Station, or even at the 40,000 square foot retail space, the University of Denver Light Rail Station, which has been vacant for 18 years.
Thank you. Chris, you've mentioned a couple times the commitment to riders that you published in September, along with several other RTD candidates, Chris Gutchenritter, Matt Larson, Bernard Telliston, Patrick O'Keefe, Karen Benker, and Brett Pagliari. Your opponents say that they were not asked to participate in the commitment to riders. Bob, you called this classic backroom politics. Kyle, you said that had you been invited to join and discuss this pledge, you would have participated, but that you were not asked. Chris, you said that you did offer to meet with Bob and Kyle when they entered the race, but they did not respond. What's going on? Chris, let's start with you.
So, I'm not planning to serve with both of them. I'm planning to serve instead of them. And I wanted to build relationships with the other people that will be on the board so that we can work together to do this. One of the benefits of getting in the race early and showing up at meetings and showing up at forums and talking to people and having conversations and texting God knows how many times with all of these people is they get to know you and they trust you. And this grew out of conversations of all of us saying, how can we fix this? We don't want to just get elected, sit on the board, and wait for something to come along. The problem we've had is a lack of action. I believe everyone on the board wants to do the right thing. I don't believe they've come in and said, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to push it through. And I think that's what people are waiting for. So this grew out of us getting together. I don't see why I needed to invite them. If they wanted to do it, they had every opportunity to go and talk to the candidates themselves. They didn't, and I think it speaks volumes, quite frankly.
Bob?
Well, let's see. I got a phone call from Chris back in the spring. Boy, he really didn't want anybody to run against him. And I, frankly, heard that as an invitation. I see the commitment to riders as being a nice idea, fairly vacuous, not much specific. But the riders are about 3% of our population. I'm interested in the non-riders. I'm interested in the fact that this system doesn't work, and that you, from a practical standpoint, unless you are independently comfortable can't afford to spend time on RTD when you can get there 2 or 3 times as fast driving. I drove here tonight. I'm not embarrassed to say that. I also spent hundreds of hours behind the wheel of an RTD bus. I'm very familiar with the realities. I know what needs to be done. Thank you.
Kyle? Yeah, of course. So there's two questions there, essentially, and I'll take an approach at one and see if I've got time for the other. So the board has a governance mandate by statute and a GM to determine the tactics. So the board actually just sets policies to guide the agency. And I think the two biggest things missing in the plan, so to speak, were policies to guide the agency and climate goals, right? So we're trying to improve ridership so that we can meet our long-term climate goals. And we do that by oversight, auditing, ensuring budgets and contracts are sound, improving internal and external communication to build better relationships with staff and community, setting clear expectations for the goals and data-driven metrics for safety, ridership, climate, and social equity. And then we want to create a healthy working relationship with the board and the public. And I think that kind of leads into the initial question. And, Bob and I were both personally attacked by Chris. So I don't think it's any surprise that after he attacked myself, my family in the press, that I didn't reach out to become a friend.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the discussion about RTD at the state capitol. So I'm curious what your opinion is on the RTD reform proposals that were floated last year in the legislature. That's part one of the question. And part two is whether you would entertain any changes structurally to the RTD board. And Bob, let's start with you.
Thanks. So I organized, along with Michael Guzman, Director Michael Guzman, the Transit Town Hall, which was held on Tax Day last spring, to push back against the taxation without representation that the Transit Reform Act represented. I met with Representative Froelich and Representative Lindstedt, and just as a casual aside, mentioned that I thought I might run for RTD District A. And in unison, they were like, "We would love that." And I thought, wow, they must really like me. But then afterwards, I thought about it. I'm like, maybe they don't like Chris. Well, maybe it's a combination of the two, and two things can be true at the same time. Your second part of your question, I apologize.
Are there any changes that you would entertain to the structure of the RTD board?
Yes, I think it would be wise to consider a couple of at-large folks so that every citizen would have 3 representatives potentially as directors on the board.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I'll take it in reverse order. As I say in the Denver Post and the voter guide, I think we should reduce the number of voting representatives. I'd like it to go down to like 11 or so. That would not increase the size of the districts dramatically, so it wouldn't make it that much harder for transit-dependent folks like me to run, and it would let us add some appointees from the state, from the governor, from the mayor, to have a better dialogue on the board around the needs of the community. The second thing is, I was one of the leading opponents of the bill. A bill, by the way, that Kyle's wife was one of the leaders on. And if you're wondering about what the dynamics of the race are, ask him about that. But I opposed the bill because it would have taken away representation from Denver. That's why the city council opposed it. That's why Chris Hansen opposed it. That's why most of our leaders stood with me in opposing the bill. They're the reason that they told me to do it, and I agreed with them. And we need people who are going to stand up and do the unpopular things. It's why I have a primary right now. It's why I have opponents right now, and I'm fine with that. I'm willing to take on tough fights, even if it means that the governor's mad at me.
Kyle?
Thank you for bringing up Danielle. My wife is the deputy chief of staff for the governor. She does not deal with any policy. She runs the operations for the government. She's raised tens of millions of dollars for COVID response. She's helped refugees here in our state, and she's quite honestly kept our state together through some of the most difficult times. So if we're going to talk about her, let's talk about the things that she has done. She did not have anything to do with the RTD appointed legislation. It's a separate policy department. I think it's a fundamental misunderstanding of the process. And I also, just in context, in my past, I've worked with appointed boards. I've been appointed to boards. I've worked with elected boards as well. I think that if there is good vetting and a process, an appointed board, a technical professional board can be incredibly effective. I also think if there's good competition and we bring out the best candidates for an elected board, we can also have a very apt and well-serving for the public on both sides.
Thank you. Right now in the fast track internal savings account, there are about $200 million up for grabs. As you probably know, the governor would like to use most of that money to complete the long-awaited corridor in the Northwest from Denver to Boulder, but there's other ideas about what to do with that money, whether it's focusing on the line in Westminster to Longmont, north from 142nd to 162nd Street, southwest from Mineral to C470, or downtown from 30th and Downing to 38th and Blake, the airport train connection, just to name a few ideas that have been thrown out there. What would you do with the internal savings account money, and how would you approach that issue? Kyle, let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the funding source for RTD is not sustainable right now, and I think we have to look at multiple ways to improve that source, because I don't know that $200 million is going to finish any of those projects with current budgets and assessments. And I don't think that the Train to Boulder, we even have like a complete assessment of the funding that it's going to require for that. So I think we need to start by improving ridership, start by collecting more, getting more people on trains and buses. And then we have to create a strategic plan that includes transit-oriented development, looks at social equity and growing ridership for transit agency for decades to come. And then I think we can look at ways to go back to voters. We can work with the state. We can work with the federal government to create a transit system that's actually sustainable in the long term.
Thank you. Bob?
I'm sorry, I'm an old man. Could you repeat the question?
Sure. What would you do with the Fast Track's internal savings account, where there are currently approximately $200 million that could be allocated to one of a number of commitments RTD has made?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I think I would have to defer to Chris here, who spends a lot of time in Boulder County. And I would think that based on my experiences riding the buses to and from Boulder, it's pretty spiffy. Those are coaches. Those are nice vehicles, very comfortable. You could fall asleep on them. You have a hard time doing that on the rest of the buses. I really would like to see Front Range Passenger Rail come to being. I think Amtrak is a great partner for that. I think they need to get more aggressive. Front Range Passenger Rail doing 2, 3, 4 runs a day is just not going to cut it. So I think we should go very slowly about spending that money.
Thank you. Chris?
So I agree with actually everything Bob just said. I have fallen asleep on the FF1. We do need to deliver Northwest Rail, 100%. We need to do it in a way that makes financial sense. And to what Kyle said, they have come out with numbers for Northwest Rail for the peak service plan. And if he'd been at the last meeting or any RTD meeting, he would know that. But because they presented in detail, it's $600 million plus $50 million a year. That's not sustainable for right now. It's not a reasonable use of money for 1,100 passengers a day. We need Front Range Passenger Rail to pass. And when it does, that takes care of most of the infrastructure necessary to build the train to Boulder and Longmont and makes it dramatically more affordable. So that's how I think we deliver it. And Bob is 100% right on this point. We need to spend that money wisely. The voters have entrusted us with it. We should not be reckless.
Thank you. We've just got time for a couple more questions. Speaking of money, the RTD directors make about $12,000 a year. That's not very much, especially in Denver. why this job? Why are you running for RTD director? Kyle?
Yeah, thanks so much. As I mentioned in my intro, I'm doing this for our climate future. My son has asthma, and I've had to teach him how to use an inhaler. And I'd like for the inhaler to be a short-term fix. I'd like for us to improve our environment, increasing ridership, and reducing our impact on and bettering our climate. I'm doing this also because I don't plan on running in for anything else. I have years of experience working in transit. I've raised billions of dollars for transit agencies. I've helped them improve their ridership, and I've also built transit-oriented communities. I'm taking a holistic, strategic approach to this in hoping that we can build the coalitions necessary to create a regional plan that encourages people to ride and growth in a smart fashion.
Great. Chris, let's go to you next. Yeah, so I'm running because I've been a transit rider for 7 years, and I've had to put up with every time RTD has let people like me down. And quite honestly, most people who ride transit with me don't have the option of taking an Uber when their bus doesn't come. And so I know from very personal experience what it's like to see this agency not work. Yes, the money sucks. It's better than a lot of things Lisa and other folks serve and get no money for the work that they do, the incredible work that they do. So I would love to see us raise the pay eventually. But for me, my whole life in politics, I have been focused on bridging the gap between the folks who do not have resources and those of us who do, and making it possible for people to lift themselves up and get access to the world. And transit is fundamentally about that. It is a service that serves low-income people and lower middle-class people, and when it works well, everyone else. And so we need to get to a point where transit is sustainable because it is something everyone wants, and then it will work better by doing so for all of the folks who need it the most. That's why I'm running.
So, I can't for the life of me understand why somebody would ride RTD when they have the opportunity to get there faster and more conveniently. I know a lot of transit-dependent people. My friends in the disabled rights community are truly transit-dependent. I really believe that we feel vulnerable when we're all alone on a light rail car or a bus. I agree with what Kyle was saying about the fact that if you have a number of people on the bus, you're going to be much safer. You're going to feel much safer. If the operators feel content and safe, riders will sense that, and then trust can return. We've got a huge opportunity. If we want to be a great city, we need a great transit system. RTD ain't that.
Thank you. Our last question. Assume that you are elected to the RTD board and fast forward 5 years. What's different about RTD because of the impact that you will make that won't happen if you are not elected? Chris, I'll start with you.
An entirely different direction taken by leadership. I'm not going to comment right now on whether that means firing everybody who's at the top of RTD. I think that's a very important personnel decision that has to be taken with due course. But we need to fundamentally rethink how we deliver services in our transit agency. We need to set us an expectation of what the customer experience will be like and work backward to the type of service delivery that requires. Right now, RTD puts out its service into the world and says, well, we screwed up at this, we screwed up at that. It's just the acceptable part of doing business. No, that is not how you get average people to trust what you are offering. You try doing that at a hotel, you will find you don't have customers anymore. So I'm very committed to completely reorienting the agency around the model of delivering a quality of service that we do not see right now and holding it to much higher expectations. And if that means letting people go, well, then we're going to do that.
Okay, Kyle, let's go to you next.
Yeah, appreciate that. So, having worked with the other transit agencies before to improve their processes, raise funds, and improve their ridership, I think what I can say that worked the best in those instances was deep collaboration with the community. And I think that's what I would like to bring to RTD, so that we do meet our climate goals, so that we do meet our ridership goals. I think for the longest time, RTD has taken a back seat in a lot of ways. You build a building and you ask for RTD after it's already up. And RTD doesn't know what to do. And so I think what we need to do is move RTD to a leadership position in the region, coordinating better with local communities so that we can create dedicated lanes for transit, communicating with the state better so that we can do funding partnerships, communicating with the federal government through the different agencies and groups that RTD is a part of, so that we can ensure sustainability in our system.
Thank you. Bob, you've got the last word.
I love that. So, in 5 years, I would like to see no more schedules. I'd like to see it be a given that you show up at a stop and within 15 minutes or less, you're going to get picked up, and whisked off on your way. Connections should be efficient. I would also like to see at that time a livable wage for transit workers. I believe the local, which has its autonomy, has been less than aggressive in doing what needs to be done to bring the wages up to speed with where we are today. $25 an hour is the starting wage when you have to pay $17.50 in rent a month for a one-bedroom apartment is more than 50% of your pay. They're not going to stick around for that kind of a job. We need those people to be well taken care of. Lastly, I want to see transit-oriented employee home ownership land development. I want the light rail stations with the park and ride sitting empty in the asphalt, reflecting the heat of the sun, to become residences that the RTD personnel can benefit from. Thank you.
Great. Let's give a hand to our candidates. Thank you very much, Dan.
Sir, can I say one thing?
Yeah, please.
I want to say one thing in favor of our TV. When my son was 11 years old, he decided to go to a charter school over Morrison Road. He and his friend met at Evans and Colorado Boulevard together, got on an RTD and rode it down Broadway, got off, walked across the street, and caught the other bus and went over. The thing that was so beautiful was there was a blind man who got on at the same spot every day with him. And it was a heart-opening experience. And they became friends with him. When they got on the bus, they would sit behind the driver, who was wonderful and loved him. About 6 months later, we were up at the Highlander Festival up in Estes Park, and that blind man was there. And they walked up and talked to him. He recognized her voice. But I think it kind of changed my son's life. So that was the most valuable experience of his childhood. So I just wanted to share.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
All right, our last speaker, but certainly not our least speaker of the night, is State Representative Emily Sirota.
Good evening, everyone. Hang with me. I'm sure everyone is tired, but I did just want to take a few minutes to talk with you. I think you heard earlier this evening about other measures that are going to show up on your ballot. There is one particular measure that I am very concerned about. That is Proposition 131. This has to do with ranked choice voting and all candidate primaries. And so some of you are nodding and you're familiar, some of you may not be. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to share my thoughts on this particular measure. I want to just share briefly, what does it do, who is doing this, and perhaps why I think they are doing it, and maybe also a little bit about what the research says about ranked choice voting. So what the ballot measure will do is it will replace our current election system for some candidates So it will impact those running for U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, all the statewide offices, so everything from governor to the treasurer, the state Senate, state House races, and I think I might be forgetting one, but the state board, sorry.
Okay.
Director. So those are the races that it will impact. It will not impact other races such as municipal office, county office, so district attorney, county commissioner, county treasurer, races like that. So what it will do for the impacted races, it changes our election system. It eliminates partisan primaries. So those things that we use to vet our candidates, to say this is who we want as the Democratic nominee, that won't happen anymore for those impacted races. Instead, it will be an all-candidate primary where everyone you can either still access the ballot through the assembly process, or you can petition on. But you will find a primary ballot with Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated, and minor parties. Anybody who petitions on can be on that ballot. The top 4 winners, the top 4 vote getters from that primary, then will go on to a general election where that will take place via ranked choice voting. And so I would say that this measure that's being proposed, and if you've seen your phone book of a blue book, the ballot language is in there, and the actual statutory changes are in there too. It's like 15 pages of your blue book, completely rewriting Title I. This measure is being pushed in this state and several others around the country this year by Kent Thiry, who some of you may know of DeVita fame. Maybe you've seen him on John Oliver. As the head of DeVita, he was twice indicted for Medicaid fraud and had to settle for wrongful death suits due to the death of patients in those dialysis units that he ran. In any case, he is running this measure to change our election system. He has said because he was disappointed with the outcome of CD8 during the 22 election, and felt that Congresswoman Caraveo should not have won, and under this system, it would be a better outcome. She would be less likely to win. He said that on a recent radio show. And he's also said that he thinks that candidates, that these new elections will have a better outcome because the current system has produced in Colorado too many legislators who are supporting laws that are regulating business and corporations, and this has been bad for the state. I think what he refers to are things like clean air and clean water laws, ensuring that we have consumer protections, that he doesn't like the change that we've made over the last 6 years with the trifecta. And I think that we have a lot to be proud of. In any case, they have very deep pockets. Kent Thiry spent $1 million during the primaries to demonstrate, I think, to flex his muscle. And I'm not even sure to necessarily influence the outcome of those races, but more to show his power about how much money he can spend and what he will do if you oppose him. He is prepared to spend a lot of money, and so are special interests with very deep pockets to influence the outcome of elections, because they are hoping that they will be able to run candidates that will confuse voters. They might have a D next to their name, but are they really the D that the Democratic Party would have chosen, or is it someone who might just look like a Democrat, but instead will be the candidate of the special interests? I think that this new election system, were it to come into being, will ultimately produce winners who are either self-funded candidates or those who are, who the special interests are going to run their independent expenditure committees to elect. It really is going to further increase the influence of dark money in our elections, which is already a serious problem, and this will make it much, much worse. That is my that is my prediction. We shall see, but if we all do our part in our job here, we may have the ability to defeat this. I will also say that, you know, for some of the other things that have been said about Proposition 131, that the proponents suggest that this is a better way to achieve a majority, somebody who has gotten the majority of votes. But in fact, there has been a study that showed that out of 51 elections that were conducted with ranked choice voting, only 8 candidates actually won with 50% of the vote. Because what happens, there's nothing that actually demonstrates that that ranked choice voting has greater participation. In fact, research shows that it leads to more spoiled ballots, ballots that are thrown out. There is a lot more confusion. There have been studies to show that it's been harmful for voters of color, voters with disabilities, and older voters. And so it's not something that actually is proven to increase participation in elections, but ultimately leads to greater ballot spoilage, which will lead to less participation. And in fact, there's no research to demonstrate that people are going to vote for candidates differently. So that the reason that you'll have only those 8 candidates winning with 50% of the vote or more is because people have ballots that end up getting, they call them exhausted, because they didn't vote for all of the candidates. So if your top candidate, or you only voted for one candidate, and then your ballot is exhausted, your vote isn't counted in the rest of the tally. It's confusing, going to cost a lot of money, approximately $21 million over the next few years is what is suggested for implementation costs. So I think for all of these reasons, we don't need more special interest influence in our elections. We have the gold standard here. I see value in our party system and an opportunity for people to organize for what it is they want in their electeds. We have a good system here. It doesn't mean that we can't always make tweaks and changes, and we do every year. But we have an election system that is a model around the country. We have high voter participation. This is a problem in search of a solution. And so I hope that you will vote no on Proposition 131. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them. And I can also direct you to the campaign if you want to get engaged with them. Yes.
I heard that Governor Bullock supports this.
Yes.
Why?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what he said publicly. I think he likes to think of himself as someone who thinks outside of the box, but he's also friends with Kent Fury, and he's not running in anything anymore, and so I don't know. Everyone should ask him what he thinks about the party and the importance of our political parties that he is supposed to be the leader of. It's a little unclear to me.
I think all his money is tied up in cash.
I think he's another million.
Yes, Chris.
They get along.
Yeah. So I was wondering about the caucus process. We're all very active Democrats. We've all probably been involved. My understanding is that we can put people on with the caucus and through the nominating thing, they go directly onto the June thing. How many people could get on through the caucus if this were to pass, for example?
I don't believe it's changing the caucus process. So, you still need 30% of the vote from caucus to then get yourself on the ballot through the caucus process. But the petition process is still available to anybody who
So we could potentially have 3 Democrats come out of caucus.
Yes.
In addition to whoever.
Yes. And I think, to be frank, it makes these elections much more expensive, and it would change how the party would or could be engaged in the general election. If you have multiple Democrats proceeding to a general election ballot, how will the party support those candidates? It's it's an unknown. It certainly presents challenges, and it also it makes the process more costly. And for folks in Denver, we end up we have we have robust primary process here in Denver. And then during the general election, we spend a lot of time trying to help get other Democrats elected. And that process will change when there are multiple Democrats on a ballot in the general election.
Final question here.
Hi. Hi, Adam.
So I like ranked choice voting. I don't like this bill. I think there are a lot of problems with this bill. It's like two separate issues in one. I'm not going to go in a full argument. There are a lot of us who we like someone a lot, but we're afraid to vote for them because we think that they're not competitive, and so we vote for someone else. And I think if there was ranked choice voting, Trump would not have won the 2016 primary. I mean, there are issues with it. There's a learning curve. If you like ranked choice voting like me, vote against this and there'll be other opportunities.
Thanks, Adam. I think there are a number of folks who are interested and curious about ranked choice voting, and I think it may be coming up at the municipal level here in Denver as well, if that's something that you want to explore. I would just say that there are multiple versions of multiple methods of conducting a ranked choice voting election. This ballot measure is a mess. It is sloppy. It was written by Brownstein Hacks. They offered 70 different measures at the title board. Shows you the deep kind of pockets that they have, that they can offer 70 different titles and take their titles to the Supreme Court, defend them there, and then gather signatures, do a signature campaign statewide, and then do this statewide campaign to get this measure passed. Deep pockets, but the measure is poorly written. The clerks have expressed extreme alarm over it. They were not consulted, and these are our election experts. And so if the measure is passed, we'll have a number of implementation challenges in front of us, but I would urge all of you to do everything that you can to talk to all the people who you know to just do a little voter education on this. It's too much, it's too fast, and it is just opening the door to greater influence from millionaires and billionaires in our elections, and I think we need a lot less of that, not more. So I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
So what's
May
the
I have a
organization?
comment? It's not a question. You and I have talked plenty of times. We voted on this at the state central committee meeting, I think a month ago. That was like 400 Democrats throughout the state. It lost, it was defeated, I think 97% to 2%. So listen to what everybody's saying, because it sounds good at times. If this passes, we're all going to be screwed. So please do everything you can to defeat this.
And what's the name of the organ? You said there was an organization that we should support?
Voter Rights Colorado is the name of the opposition campaign. So if anybody wants to donate or get engaged, let me know. I'm happy to connect you.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you everybody for sticking it out to the end. Reminder, no meeting next month, but we do have our wine and cheese on Wednesday, November 13th. Have a good night. Please help us put away the tables and chairs.
If I don't.